So I'm going to jump right into it and cut right to the chase. As a high schooler, drinking and partying can be very intriguing and seem like a great time, but it is terrifying how quickly alcohol can take over your life and how fast things can spiral out of control without you even realizing it. This is exactly what happened to me when I was in high school. I started drinking on a regular basis right at the start of my sophomore year, as soon as I got my license. Not only was I drinking every weekend, but I was also getting behind the wheel and driving, and honestly, not thinking much of it. It was all fun and games to me, and that's oftentimes the mindset that people have when they're doing something dangerous, until something bad happens. It didn't take long until, sure enough, I had my first run-in with the law. It occurred in August of 2008, just a few short weeks after I got my license. I had just turned 16 and got pulled over one night when I was drunk. Somehow the cops did not give me a DUI and actually wound up letting me go. Looking back at it now, it's almost like God was giving me a warning. The close call I had with the police should have made me realize right then and there that this was not the path I wanted to be going down. In hindsight, getting a DUI that night might have been the best thing for me. Instead, I chose to abuse this second chance that God had given me and continued to send my life into a tailspin, one that consisted of drunkenness, lying, stealing, and worst of all, the destruction of my relationship with God. My entire sophomore year of high school consisted of nonstop partying. It usually entailed a group of friends and I getting as drunk as we possibly could on weekends, and more often than not, driving around while doing so. I was also destroying my conscience in the process. The guilt and shame that I'd once felt anytime I drank and drove was now gone, and I no longer thought twice before getting behind the wheel of a vehicle drunk. The lifestyle I was now leading also had a negative impact on my social life. I lost touch with great friends I'd grown up with, people who were dedicated to their faith and who were incredible role models. The nonstop drinking had eroded my judgment so badly that I now looked at people who were invested in Christ as boring or stupid, and as people that I didn't want to be associated with. The reality, though, was that I didn't like the person who I was when I was sober. I was using alcohol as basically an escape from reality. All the fun activities and things that I used to love doing had suddenly become boring to me, and getting drunk was the only thing that I had any interest in doing. Alcohol had consumed me and was in some ways taking over my life. I had no idea how to have fun or enjoy life while sober, which pretty much led to me living in this false reality that made me think getting drunk as often as possible was the way to go. I didn't realize it at the time, but alcohol had also created this horrible domino effect in my life, and it led to me doing all kinds of things that I swore I would never do. My parents raised me to have the same kinds of morals and values that I'm sure just about every single person in this room was raised with. Don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, treat others with respect. Those morals I once knew were now gone. I was lying constantly to cover up my drinking and even stealing alcohol from people I knew. I was addicted to it and was willing to do pretty much whatever it took to get my hands on it. This terrible lifestyle continued all throughout my junior year of high school as well, and this was when it finally started to catch up with some of the people around me. One of my best friends at the time got a DUI that year, and several other people I hung around with got in trouble with the police as well. Despite this, I continued to drink and drive as often as ever. Looking back, it's incredible that I was never killed or that I didn't kill someone else. This was perhaps best on display one night during my junior year when I got mixed up with some pretty bad people. Several of them were not from PW, and they, for lack of a better term, basically wanted to beat the crap out of me. I was out driving around with some friends one night, drunk, of course, and I knew this group of guys was also out looking for me. They eventually found me and were determined to get me out of my car so that we could fight. I wanted no part of this, so I floored it and got out of there. They had no interest in going quietly, though, and began chasing me in their car. I was probably going 70 or 80 miles an hour and realized that they were still right behind me. I hit the gas as hard as I could and kept my foot on that pedal. I remember seeing the speedometer hit 110, 115, 120 miles an hour before I eventually lost them and finally got away. Looking back, it's incredible that I never lost control of that car. If I would have crashed at a speed like that, there's no chance I would have survived. That story right there sums up how stupid and reckless I was in those years, and how, again, it was all pretty much fun and games to me. Things finally caught up with me during my senior year of high school. A party I was at that fall got busted by the police, and I got caught. The cops put me in the back of their cop car and wound up calling my parents at 2 in the morning to have them come pick me up. As a parent, what a terrifying feeling that must be when you hear that phone ring in the middle of the night and there's a police officer on the other end. This run-in that I had with the cops and an MIP now on my record should have been the wake-up call that I finally needed to stop drinking. And I did stop for a little bit, but only because my parents wouldn't let me leave the house. I had destroyed my conscience so badly by this point that the only thing I could think about doing was going out and drinking again. It didn't take long before I was out drinking and driving yet again, and I didn't know it at the time, but my next run-in with the law was about to be a lot more severe. As springtime of my senior year rolled around and graduation was drawing near, most of my classmates were applying for colleges and excited about the opportunities in front of them. I, on the other hand, had completely disregarded my grades over the past 3 years, which was one of the many things that had suffered as a direct result of my drinking. I knew I didn't have much of a chance of going anywhere other than LCC for college. I remember I gave a presentation in Joan Esch's careers class my senior year about my plans after high school. And I said during it, only half jokingly, that every college I applied to either said no or just didn't respond at all. I had my most significant run-in with the police the night before my final day of senior year of high school. Some friends and I went out and got drunk and were driving around, and sure enough, we got pulled over. Most of the guys in the car immediately got out and ran, but things really got complicated when the police officer happened to have a canine unit with him, and he set his German Shepherd loose to go after the guys who ran. Long story short, it was my car that we'd been driving, and I was arrested and taken to jail. As I began to sober up in my jail cell that night, and the reality of the situation started to set in, I remember thinking, how in the world did things get this bad? I had been raised by my parents to respect the law and not do reckless things. And yet, here I was in jail at 18 years old. Making that phone call the next day to my mom to have her bail me out of jail was the worst phone call that I've ever had to make. As a parent, I can't imagine how disappointing it must be getting a call from your child and having them tell you that they're in jail. Having to hire a lawyer and deal with the case over the next several weeks was nothing but a nightmare for my parents. The people that my drinking took the biggest toll on was, without a doubt, my parents. I put my mom and my dad through absolute hell. I treated them like garbage. I lied to them constantly about where I was on weekends, who I was with, and what I was doing. I kept them up late at night countless times, worrying about where I was or if I was okay. Anytime they tried to step in and straighten me out, I looked at them as the problem. I was too selfish to realize they were only trying to help. The heartache that I put them through never even fazed me until something my dad said to me once. One day he said, "Your mom has been up the last 3 nights crying, and you're the reason why." I'm sure my parents prayed for me to change constantly in those years, not only to stop drinking, but to also come back to the faith. I had no relationship whatsoever with God at that time, and was simply going through the motions and doing the bare minimum as a Catholic. Someone else who, without a doubt, tried to step in was the Virgin Mary. Looking back, I had several unique occurrences, if you will, involving Mary that I truly believe was her trying to step in and help. I'm not someone who puts much stock or credibility into dreams, but I had this dream about Mary once that is just etched in my mind. It occurred when I was in high school and in the midst of my constant sin and drinking. In the dream, there was this beautiful statue of Mary, and the statue suddenly began crying tears of blood. My gut tells me that Mary was trying to tell me how sad she was with the path that my life was going down. I actually spoke with someone recently from Westphalia about this, whose opinion I respect immensely. And after they did some research on it, they told me that this dream actually isn't that uncommon. What it's widely believed to signify is that you're on the doorstep of hell. And honestly, that's probably where I was at that time. It's almost like Mary was giving me this wake-up call to try and make me realize how badly I needed to make changes. Another somewhat unique occurrence involving Mary happened when I was in high school, and as I was cleaning out an old closet in my childhood home. I grew up just northeast of Westphalia on Centerline Road in an extremely old house, about 100 years old. And as I was going through this old dresser once, I found tucked way in the back a Mary scapular. I had never seen it before and didn't think much of it until I read what was engraved on it. It said, "Whoever dies wearing this brown scapular shall not suffer eternal fire. Mary's promise." To this day, I don't know whose it was or where it came from, but it was like it was just sitting there, tucked away, waiting for me to find it. It was almost like Mary was telling me that she wanted to protect me and for me to start trusting in her again, but that I needed to come back to the faith first to do so. A third example involving Mary occurred when I was in college. I started off going to college at LCC and then eventually transferred to Eastern Michigan University, which is where I graduated from and spent 2.5 years. College was kind of a transition period for me. I began to realize, at least a little bit, how important it is to live out your Catholic faith. With that being said, I continued to drink heavily and get drunk on a weekly basis, and this was still a huge part of my life. Alcohol was still running my life at this point. I had no idea how to handle this newfound freedom that came with living away from home for the first time, especially once I turned 21. Access to alcohol was just a quick trip to the store away, and I no longer had any parents or adults looking over my shoulder trying to keep me in line. Another consequence that heavy drinking can have on you as you get older is from a physical standpoint, and I found this out the hard way. You'll oftentimes hear about first-year students gaining weight in college and people calling it the freshman 15. Well, I skipped the freshman 15 and went straight to the freshman 40. I gained 40 pounds my first year in college. I now had what was basically a disgusting beer gut. The weekly trips to McDonald's, Wendy's, and Taco Bell probably played a factor too, but the alcohol certainly didn't help. I knew so many people in college who partied constantly and were always drunk or high or doing drugs. Most of them were so miserable. None of them had Jesus or any kind of faith in their lives, and it was like the temporary quote-unquote happiness, as they saw it, that alcohol provided was the only thing that they were living for. Seeing people like this, I think, is what finally made me realize that this wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted anymore. Once I hit my senior year of college, I had to start realistically thinking about what my life would look like after graduation. You know, where I would live, hopefully having a family someday, what kind of job I would work at. And I realized that I wasn't going to attain any of these goals if alcohol remained the main focus in my life. I was still playing with fire in regards to the careless things that I would do when I was drunk. One night during my senior year of college, I got thrown in the back of a cop car yet again, and somehow didn't get anything out of it, and they let me go. I was 23 at that time and was starting to realize that I really need to grow up. It was also right around this time that another unique occurrence with Mary occurred. It was on a cold winter's night, either January or February in 2016, and some friends and I were out late one night driving around. We were near an airport not far from Eastern Michigan's campus in Ypsilanti in southeast Michigan, and we found this huge stretch of open land a ways behind the airport. It was pretty isolated, and there were no buildings or people or vehicles around. It was basically a deserted strip of land. It also had several rows of tall chain-linked fences on it, and for whatever reason, we thought it would be a good idea to go drive up and down these rows. It was real late at night, probably midnight or so, and we weren't necessarily doing anything wrong, per se, but we still probably shouldn't have been there. So we're driving real slow beside these tall chain-linked fences. There were no lights, no buildings around, so the only light that we could see was the glow in front of us from the vehicle's headlights. There were 4 of us in the vehicle, 2 of my friends from college, and then me and my girlfriend at the time. As we were turning to go around one of the fences and drive down a new row, my buddy, who was driving, all of a sudden hits the brakes. Directly in front of the vehicle, in the headlights, was this 3 or 4 foot tall statue of Mary. It was all white, and she had her arms slightly outstretched and her palms facing upward. All 4 of us froze, and nobody said a word. Again, we were in this place with no people and no buildings, nothing but a few fences around, and yet here was this statue of Mary, almost like it had just been randomly placed there. All four of us were pretty freaked out, and we were all like, we got to get out of here. And we did. We turned around and went straight home. There could be a perfectly good explanation as to why that statue was there that night, but I have a hard time believing that we just happened to run into it randomly or by chance. Personally, I don't think that any of these Mary occurrences that I've talked about were coincidences. The story I just told and the dream about the statue, crying tears of blood, and finding the scapular all occurred during a stretch in my life when I needed Christ and Mary most. It's no coincidence that all three happened when alcohol was running my life, and I was the furthest away from the faith that I've ever been. The reason I'm sharing these stories about Mary is not only to emphasize how badly she wants all of us to trust in her and to have a close relationship with her, but to also exemplify how significant of a sin heavy drinking is. I think my drinking habits were so severe that Mary felt the need to intervene, and it worked. Heavy drinking was a sin that plagued me for about 10 years, and honestly, was something that I never thought I'd get past. I figured that I'd be able to minimize it, and that the desire and temptation to get drunk would always be there. That desire is now gone. I realized I had turned a corner in the summer of 2020, when instead of getting drunk on Friday nights like I had done so many times in the past, I found myself spending a lot of those Friday nights at adoration instead. Eliminating drunkenness also went hand in hand with me making my Catholic faith a priority again and building my relationship with Christ into the best shape that it's ever been in. There are so many goals and things I still want to accomplish in life, both from a personal and professional standpoint, and it's so clear to me now that I had to put that lifestyle of drinking and partying behind me if I hope to accomplish any of these goals. It's like a huge obstacle has been removed. It's like God has helped clear the path for me to become the person that I still strive to be. I used to drink so much because it made me happy in the moment, and because I felt like I was escaping from whatever problems I had when I was sober. And this is why so many people turn to alcohol, to escape something. For younger people, those problems can oftentimes be a lack of friends, or problems at home, or problems at school, or whatever the case may be. The issue, though, is that those problems are still there when you're not drunk anymore. They don't magically go away, and alcohol only makes things worse. You may think it's providing a solution, but what you're doing is finding a temporary answer to permanent problems. The permanent solution that you should turn to is God and prayer. One of the main reasons I started drinking in the first place at such a young age was because I wanted to fit in so badly. I didn't think it would turn into any kind of addiction, and I thought it would be easy to set limits and make sure I never got carried away. The problem is, alcohol is a drug and is incredibly addicting for a lot of people, and that's why they get hooked on it. The key is not to get into that habit of drinking heavily in the first place. Getting drunk, knowingly getting drunk, is a mortal sin. The condemnation of drunkenness is mentioned several times in the Bible, along with the importance of staying sober. A good example is Peter chapter 5, verse 8, when he says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour." The devil wants you to take up drinking and wants you to enjoy getting drunk because of how severe of a sin it is. and because of the way, it'll destroy your relationship with God and those around you. You look around the world today and you see alcohol and partying glorified constantly, whether it's on TV or in movies or in music. That's the devil at work. He wants you to think it's okay and that it's really not that bad in the first place. You oftentimes hear about how our bodies are temples of God and how they should be treated with reverence and respect. When you get drunk, though, you're abusing your own body and all the gifts that God provided you with. You're making a mockery of what He created you as. When I used to drink and party all the time, I was also breaking one of the 10 Commandments. It was the first one, how you shall not have strange gods before the Lord your God. You hear about people who idolize money or some kind of material goods, but I was idolizing alcohol. I made it such a priority in my life that it became much more important to me than my relationship with God and my Catholic faith as a whole. It caused me to commit mortal sin all the time and to miss Mass on weekends and to lie and cheat and steal. And the sad part is, I was okay with all of it. I'm just so thankful that I was able to put it behind me when I did, before it got too late or caused any more damage. I've known so many people who can't get past it, and I've seen it ruin so many friendships and even marriages. A lot of you here are probably thinking, this isn't something that's going to happen to me, that I don't have to worry about things like this at 16, 17, 18 years old. The thing is, most people think that something will never happen to them until it does. I certainly never thought that I'd lose friends or fall away from God or have a drinking problem when I first started drinking, but then all those things eventually occurred. Father Mike Schmitz has a short video on YouTube called Understanding Our Capacity for Evil. It's a great video and I'd highly recommend it. In it, he explains that oftentimes when people say they would never do something evil, it usually means that they just simply haven't had the opportunity to do so yet. He talks about how we as humans have such a capacity for evil, and that we can deceive ourselves by thinking that we'd never commit some of the terrible sins that other people do. I experienced this firsthand because I would deceive myself all the time. Anytime I would get behind the wheel of a vehicle drunk and then drive, I never thought I was at risk of killing anybody or killing myself because I had the foolish mindset of, that would never happen to me. Every now and then on the news, you'll hear about high schoolers who are killed in car accidents because they were drunk and wound up crashing. I bet just about every single teenager who has died that way probably thought something like that would never happen to them. It's important to remember that nobody is immune to tragedy. One of the teachers we had at PW when we were in high school, Tim Smith, was a former police officer. And he would tell us stories about some of the tragic things that he would come across on the job, especially involving teenagers. He once said that having to be at the scene of fatal car accidents, oftentimes involving alcohol in high schoolers, was the worst part of the job, especially when it meant having to deliver the tragic news to the parents of the deceased teenager who died in the car accidents. He would also add how avoidable tragedies like this are, and how so much heartache and devastation can be avoided by simply not drinking and driving. One of the great things that everybody in this room shares, if they grew up in Westphalia or Pewamo or the surrounding areas, is the way that our parents raised us. For all of us, we shared a common upbringing, tremendous morals and values that have been ingrained in us. The knowledge to treat others with respect, and most importantly, in expectation to live out our Catholic faith and spread it to others. When we go out and we get drunk and we do reckless things, we're making a mockery of the values that our parents instilled in us. And as a result, we're letting our parents down in a big way, but we're also letting God down when we do this. I would assume just about everybody in this room would admit that they don't enjoy letting their parents down. On that same note, why would you be okay with letting God down, who is our true Father and who wants to see us do well? Another thing that you're doing when you get drunk on a regular basis is you're limiting yourself and what you can become. You're not taking advantage of the gifts that God gave you. When I was younger, I didn't think I had any potential to accomplish much of anything or be very successful in life. I figured I might as well drink because I'm not going to accomplish anything anyway. That mindset is absolute garbage and is nothing but a cop-out. God created every single person in this room with a unique skill set and a special set of gifts. Take advantage of them. Fulfill your potential and become the best person that you can possibly be. Set an example for others by not giving in to peer pressure and drinking. It takes a lot of courage to do so, but stand up and be the one who says no. Others are bound to follow your lead. You might not think doing something like that is all that meaningful, but it'll have a bigger impact than you think, and other people will admire your courage for it. Perhaps some of you have already started drinking and are trying to stop, but aren't sure of what to do instead. This was certainly the case for me. It was like, if I'm going to cut down on partying, then what am I going to do in the meantime to have fun? I would suggest spending as much time as possible with your family and your grandparents and your relatives and your friends who are good role models in your life. Not to sound harsh or grim with this next statement, but your parents and your grandparents aren't going to be around forever. It's never too early to start spending as much time as possible with them. I've lost 3 of my 4 grandparents, and I would give anything to be able to go back and trade some of those nights that I spent partying for just a little more time with them. It's amazing how much your priorities can change as you grow and get older, and how you start to see life through a different lens when alcohol isn't clouding your judgment. Partying and getting blackout drunk is what I used to live for, and is what used to get my adrenaline going more than anything. I've since learned how to appreciate the little things in life and how to appreciate God's creation. You know what tops my priority list now and what gets my adrenaline going more than anything? Seeing my parents and my siblings happy. Seeing the immense joy that my sister's 3 young kids have brought to our family. Having hope and optimism about the plans that God still has in store for my life. Seeing those dark blue skies on an autumn day when the sun is out and the fall color is as vibrant as ever. A Westphalia legend, our very own Joe Fedawa, perhaps summed it up best when he recently said he envisions the Holy Spirit as the breeze that you see blowing through the trees in the fall color as the sun is shining on a perfect autumn day. It's no coincidence that I started appreciating God's creation and beauty again when I eliminated drunkenness from my life. There's nothing wrong with going out and having a few drinks once you turn 21. It's something that I still love doing to this day. But it's all about moderation once you hit that age and knowing how to limit yourself. In regards to underage drinking and getting drunk, though, don't do these things. You hurt not only yourself, but the people who love you most. Fulfill your potential and become the person that God created each and every one of you to be. Don't let alcohol limit you or hold you back in life. More importantly, don't let it be an obstacle in your relationship with God. You'll find that life is much more enjoyable and satisfying when you have a clear mind and when excessive drinking is not a part of your life. Thank you, and God bless each and every one of you.